Like Girl Scouts said they would, peanut butter and chocolate.
They were once country music royalty, living in luxury, topping charts, and adored by millions. But behind the fame came betrayal, addictions, and heartbreak. In the end, many lost it all, dying broke.
For me to travel, since my sweetheart she is gone, the road is wrong.
Today, we uncover 15 country stars who fell from riches to ruin, and the last story may be the most heartbreaking of all. Faron Young was once one of the brightest stars in country music. From the 1,950 seconds through the 80 seconds, he lit up the stage with his smooth tenor voice and cowboy charisma. Hits like Going Steady and Hello Walls made him a staple on the charts, while his investments in real estate and publishing made him a millionaire. Fans called him the hillbilly heartthrob, and he seemed untouchable. But as country music shifted, radio dismissed his sound as outdated.
But I lost her to my friend there on the right.
The very stations that had once made him a household name now turned their backs. His fortune dwindled, his health declined, and his personal demons grew heavier. By the mid-1,990 seconds, Faron was isolated, bitter, and financially broken. In December 1996, unable to cope with the loneliness and loss, he took his own life. It was a heartbreaking end for a man who had once been country royalty. In the 1,950 seconds, Lefty Frizzell was the definition of country stardom. With classics like If You've Got the Money, I've Got the Time, he became an icon of the honky-tonk era. By 25, he was living the dream, Cadillacs, sold-out shows, and fans across America. His unique phrasing influenced generations of singers, from Willie Nelson to George Jones. But fame came with a cost. Alcohol addiction, a string of bad management deals, and crippling tax problems drained his bank account. Once he had mansions, later he was reduced to a modest apartment, struggling to pay bills. His health deteriorated, and in 1975, at just 47 years old, Lefty died of liver failure. His friends had to gather money to pay for his funeral, a tragic irony for a man who had once lived like a king. Few embodied the outlaw spirit like Johnny Paycheck. With his rough edge and defiant anthem, "Take this job and shove it," he became the working man's hero. He lived fast, partied harder, and spent money like water. His wild reputation was as legendary as his music. But behind the fame came chaos. Legal battles, drug use, and reckless spending led him into a downward spiral. A prison sentence further shattered his career. When he was released, the IRS seized everything: his house, his tour bus, even his Grammy Award. Once a millionaire, Johnny was spotted begging for gas money at roadside stations, a painful image for fans who had idolized him.
In his back for now 15 years. I've seen that one.
He died in 2003 at 64, his body frail and his fortune gone. A fallen outlaw who had burned too brightly. Hank Locklin was once one of country music's most respected ballad singers. With hits like Please Help Me, I'm Falling, and Send Me the Pillow That You Dream On, he earned worldwide fame. His soft tenor voice carried him to the Grand Ole Opry and stages across Europe and Asia, where his music reached audiences who barely spoke English. But time was unkind. When the British invasion and rock and roll swept the charts, country artists like Hank were pushed aside. The bookings stopped, the royalty checks shrank, and his name faded from the headlines. Though he lived to the age of 91, passing in 2009, he spent his later years respected but far from wealthy. For a man whose songs once defined romance, the silence of his final decades was bittersweet. David Stringbean Aikman was beloved as a banjo-picking comedian on Hee Haw and the Grand Ole Opry. Known for his long frame and bib overalls, he brought laughter to millions. Offstage, though, Stringbean distrusted banks. He hid cash in jars and inside the walls of his rural Tennessee cabin. That habit cost him his life. In November 1973, robbers broke into his home, believing he had piles of money hidden away. When Stringbean and his wife returned from the Opry that night, they were ambushed and murdered. The killers never found the fortune they imagined. Years later, $20,000 in rotting bills was discovered tucked inside his cabin money, Stringbean never spent. He died poor by choice, his frugality turning tragic in the cruelest way possible. Blaze Foley was a wandering poet, a man who never quite fit the mold. Known as the duct tape messiah for patching his boots and guitar with silver tape, he embodied the ragged soul of outlaw country. His songs, like If I Could Only Fly, carried heartbreaking beauty, but record deals slipped away and mainstream success never came. Blaze spent his life in bars, motels, and the kindness of friends, always chasing a sound that lived closer to the heart than the charts. In 1989, while defending a friend during an argument, Blaze was shot and killed at just 39 years old. Paramedics found only $30 in his pocket. Yet, his words outlived him. Artists from Merle Haggard to Willie Nelson later covered his songs, cementing his posthumous place in country history. In life, he was a drifter. In death, a legend. Hank Snow was a titan of country music. With I've Been Everywhere and over 140 albums, he became an international star, carrying the Grand Ole Opry's name to stages across the world. From humble beginnings in Nova Scotia, he rose to fame with a golden voice and tireless work ethic, influencing artists like Elvis Presley along the way. But behind the glittering career was betrayal. Shady managers skimmed his earnings, while even his own son manipulated his finances. Decades of royalties slipped through his fingers. By the time Hank passed in 1999 at 85, debts had swallowed the wealth he had spent a lifetime building. A man who had given so much to music left this world with his legacy intact, but his fortune erased. Tommy Collins helped create the Bakersfield sound, writing songs that lit up the charts and inspired legends like Merle Haggard and Buck Owens. In the 1,950 seconds, he seemed destined for greatness, a songwriter's songwriter with a bright future. But demons haunted him. Severe depression and a crumbling personal life pushed him away from the spotlight. Tax troubles and mental health struggles stripped him of stability. By the 1,960 seconds, he was knocking on strangers' doors, selling Bibles just to survive, while others grew rich performing his songs. Collins eventually returned to songwriting, penning hits for George Strait and others, but the financial damage was permanent. When he died in 2000 at 69, he left behind an enduring musical fingerprint, yet almost no money to show for it. Johnny Horton was the golden boy of late negative 1,950 seconds country. With his energetic performance of the Battle of New Orleans, he won a Grammy and cemented his place as one of country's brightest rising stars. His blend of honky-tonk charm and rockabilly swagger seemed unstoppable. Then, in 1960, fate struck cruelly. Driving home after a concert, Johnny's car was hit head-on by a drunk driver. He was killed instantly at just 35 years old. The tragedy stunned fans, but worse still, his financial affairs were in shambles. His insurance policies hadn't been updated, leaving his widow destitute. Even as Johnny's records soared on the radio, his family struggled to survive. His songs lived forever, but the man behind them left this world with nothing. Billie Joe Spears gave women in country music a powerful voice. Her 1,975 anthem Blanket on the Ground became a worldwide hit, celebrated for its boldness and honesty. With her twang and fire, she carved a unique space in Nashville, inspiring female artists who came after her. But the industry wasn't kind. By the 1,990 seconds, her star had faded, and she was reduced to singing in small clubs just to pay for gas and groceries. Then came throat surgery, which silenced her instrument and shattered her career. Though her home was lined with gold records, they were little more than plaques on the wall. When she passed in 2011 at 73, Billie Joe Spears was remembered as a pioneer, but financially, she left the world as poor as when she entered it. Mel Street was the voice of heartbreak in the 1,970 seconds. With 13 top 20 hits like Borrowed Angel and Smoky Mountain Memories, he seemed destined to join the ranks of country's immortals. His songs carried raw emotion, resonating deeply with working-class fans. But behind the music, Mel battled demons. Depression, mounting debts, and the crushing pressures of fame grew unbearable. On the 21st of October, 1978, his 45th birthday, just hours before he was scheduled to perform, he ended his own life. His death devastated the country community. Friends organized a benefit concert to pay for his funeral expenses. Later, his posthumous greatest hits album sold over 400,000 copies, money he never lived to see. Mel's story was a reminder of the invisible battles so many stars fight, even at the height of success. To many, Townes Van Zandt was the greatest songwriter to ever hold a guitar. With masterpieces like Poncho and Lefty and If I Needed You, he painted portraits of loneliness, longing, and life's brutal truths. Bob Dylan and Willie Nelson hailed him as a genius, but brilliance came with a heavy cost. Struggles with bipolar disorder, shock therapy treatments, and alcoholism plagued his life. He often gave away his royalty checks, preferring a bottle of whiskey or the company of strangers over financial stability. His friends described him as both magnetic and heartbreaking, a man whose songs could silence a room even as he self-destructed. On New Year's Day, 1997, Townes died at 52 from health complications brought on by years of abuse. His catalog lives on, but the man himself left the world penniless, a prophet never fully embraced in his own time. Gentleman Jim Reeves helped create the Nashville sound, smoothing country's rough edges with his warm baritone. Hits like Welcome to My World and He'll Have to Go carried him from honky-tonks to international fame. He sold millions of records and became a cultural ambassador for country music. But in 1964, tragedy struck. Jim's plane crashed near Nashville, killing him instantly at just 40 years old. His untimely death shocked fans, but the greater tragedy came afterward. Unscrupulous business partners exploited his catalog, siphoning away profits. His widow, Mary Reeves, was left struggling, mortgaging their home just to survive, even as Jim's songs continued to sell worldwide. His voice still echoes through speakers today, but the fortune it generated largely lined the pockets of others. Graham Parsons was born into money, heir to a Florida citrus fortune worth millions. But wealth couldn't fill the emptiness inside him. Turning to music, he pioneered country rock, blending honky-tonk with psychedelic soul in bands like the Byrds and the Flying Burrito Brothers. His influence would shape the sound of the Rolling Stones and inspire generations of musicians. Yet Graham's life spiraled into excess. Drugs, parties, and reckless living burned through his inheritance. By 26, he was living more like a vagabond than a millionaire. In 1973, at the Joshua Tree Inn, he overdosed on morphine and tequila. He died with debts greater than his assets, leaving behind broken contracts and grieving friends. Even his death became chaotic. His body was stolen by friends who set it aflame in the desert, honoring his wild wish. Graham's short life was a story of privilege squandered, genius underappreciated, and tragedy sealed in myth. Larry John Wilson had a voice like no other, deep, soulful, and soaked in Southern grit. In the 1,970 seconds, Rolling Stone hailed him as one of the finest singers of his generation. His debut album won critical acclaim, placing him alongside rising stars in Nashville and beyond. But radio wouldn't play his songs. His blend of country, soul, and blues was too unconventional for the mainstream market. Record sales dried up, and with them, the royalties. To survive, Larry John left the stage behind. He drove trucks, sold tires, and gave guitar lessons, piecing together a living while still carrying the gift that the industry had overlooked. In 2010, at the age of 69, he passed away quietly. Instead of wealth or headlines, he left behind stacks of unpaid bills and a small but devoted circle of fans who knew they had witnessed greatness ignored by the world.